But welcome to the webinar on gender-based violence. My name is Muhammad Abduroaf. I'm a practicing advocate in the Western Cape, and I deal with various legal matters, ranging from family law to commercial to criminal as well. But I'm a family law expert, basically because most of my matters relates to family law. Once again, welcome. The topic is gender-based violence and the legal remedies applicable to that. On the issue of the legal remedies, there is a lot to say, but maybe not necessary to stipulate them all in this webinar. There are a few participants. We'll only use first names today. One of them are Susan, and she she volunteered to give some of her experiences on gender-based violence. So we'll start off with her. And then as the participants come in, I see we have Hawa as well, and she can go after Susan, and we'll take it from there. My take or my understanding on gender-based violence is violence inferred or applied to another person, another gender. So it doesn't say violence against women, it says gender-based violence. But violence that gets inflicted upon another gender based upon cultural beliefs or norms, stereotypes, or just the mere fact that one gender is seen as a gender where violence can be inflicted upon. For argument's sake, let's say from a cultural point of view, if you apply gender-based violence to women, basically women would be seen under that culture as being inferior to men, and they can be taken advantage of. So they will be abused if they say something they shouldn't say. They can be slapped, they can be sworn at, they can be ridiculed, they can be belittled. Then we have the other scenario from a stereotypical point of view, whereby some people would see women as being inferior to men, and they can take advantage of that. So if in a marital situation, whereby a woman will speak up against the husband, she will not clean the house properly in his view, etc., and then he will inflict some type of violence. It can either be physical, emotional, psychological, sometimes sexual as well. But as the case may be, it's violence that's being applied or inflicted upon the other gender based upon the norms of that specific situation, either religious, cultural, society, etc. Another example could be in the workplace, where women are seen most probably as being inferior to men in the workplace, and they will treat them differently in a negative way, and which obviously culminates into violence. Obviously, it's a big problem in South Africa. You can go online now, type in the search phrase gender-based violence, and you'll see a lot of articles popping up, especially with COVID-19, with the lockdown. A huge amount of gender-based violence activities has taken place. And this is a big problem because how can we allow it to happen? I mean, firstly, violence shouldn't be applicable. There shouldn't be any type of violence in the first place. But here we have, most of the gender-based violence applies to relationships, husband and wife, partner, girlfriend and boyfriend, or family members. It should come to an end. The problem we have is that I know government is talking about it, society is talking about it, but there seems to be a bit of a silence in that regard, where people prefer not to be part of the agenda of the eradication of gender-based violence. And that concerns me, it concerns my organization, it concerns our lawyer, and therefore we have taken this opportunity to end our webinar, free webinar session for the Women's Month on the topic of gender-based violence. The sad reality is that the interest on this specific topic was not as popular as the first four topics. We had like child maintenance, child custody, relocation, etc. Those are much more popular, but maybe because it is also a problem as well. We do not disagree on that issue. However, we would have liked to have some more type of involvement from society on this specific topic. I have said my say on the introductory part. On the issue concerning legal remedies meaning what can a person do if you are a victim of gender-based violence. One, of course, example would be go to the police. You say, I've been assaulted, I have been attacked by my partner, by my friend, or by somebody at work, and you lay a complaint, and they will prosecute that specific person. So that could be the first port of call, speaking to the authorities about that. Obviously, if you are a victim of a domestic relationship, there are other remedies applicable as well. One of those remedies would obviously be approaching the domestic violence court, whereby you can apply for an interdict against the person that inflicted domestic violence against you. There's a lot written online regarding that, but that avenue is available to those who would like to proceed to get some type of relief if you are a victim of gender-based violence. Then, of course, if you are not in a relationship where the Domestic Violence Act doesn't apply, you can look at the Prevention of Harassment Act. You can look at various other legislation. You can apply for peace order as well, obtain an interdict against the next person. Those are the structural things which you can put in place to prevent gender-based violence from happening again to you in the future. However, what can you do beyond that? Now I've got an interdict, I have been a victim, it came to an end. The other remedies obviously would be the civil remedies, whereby you can sue, you can claim damages from that person. Many people do not know about this, but you can sue your partner, somebody at work, as the case may be, that has inflicted gender-based violence against you. So you have that specific civil remedy in your arsenal. Take him to court or her to court, depends what it is, and claim damages for loss, for whatever pain and suffering, whatever the case may be, for having to go to the hospital, for the scars on your face, for the suffering which you have incurred. Those are the remedies which you can, look into. And I'll encourage you, if you want to do it, to actually follow the civil remedies if you were a victim of gender-based violence. In saying this, the reason why I'm saying this is, firstly, unless we do something about gender-based violence and we respond to it, nothing will happen from a point of view whereby it will just continue taking place. So if the buzzword goes out there that people are going to the domestic violence courts, they are going to the police, they are civilly suing people for inflicting gender-based violence upon them, clearly people will be afraid of doing that, and therefore they will stop. But if you become a victim and you keep silent and you continue your life without mentioning or anything, doing anything about it, what happens? Tomorrow, it will be inflicted upon someone else. So, Suzanne, I think you are ready. I would like to unmute you. If you can unmute, and maybe if you'd like to put your video on. As I mentioned earlier on, this part of the session whereby the participants will be speaking about the experiences on gender-based violence, I will not put it live. It will be blacked out, or there will be something in its place. But welcome, Suzanne, and we're not using any second names. We're only using first names. So Suzanne, maybe you have about 3 to 4 minutes to speak about your experiences on gender-based violence.
Okay, thank you very much for having me on the webinar. As I said before, it's the first time, so very new. But I am a victim of domestic violence, gender-based violence, as we put it today. Going back to 40 years, where still today I am abused by that very person and his now wife on a daily basis. I do have what we used to call a restraining order from the Supreme Court back to 1984. I cannot get it used. I get told it's just not usable. I have to go back to the magistrate's court and get a protection order. I feel I shouldn't have to, because I feel the High Court restraining order is even more important than my protection order. But based on this, and when I was physically abused from him prior to our marriage, I was young, I was 18, forced into the marriage due to his threats and silence of myself not speaking out to my parents. So it went on, and eventually I ran away with my child, who he kidnapped, and it took me 2.5 years to find the child, who landed up also being an abused child at that time. So since then, I have had the abuse. We're divorced and everything else. I went on to another 3 marriages thereafter, which unfortunately all ended in some type of physical abuse. My the one marriage which was long, which was 21 years, was a lot of emotional and financial abuse. But he knew that as soon as he lifted his hand to me, I would leave, because I'd made that promise to myself, no one would hit me or my children again. So at the end, he wanted me gone. He wanted to go on with his affairs, and he physically abused me. I left, I was taken, and at that time I was actually running my own NGO, which we had developed homes, safe homes for women and children abused. And I was then put into a safe house myself at the time, and went on, finished that marriage and went on to another relationship. And again, that ended after 10 years in abuse. And that abuse actually started from friends who kept on saying that, and we're going back to cultural beliefs, and I'm going to mention it as an Afrikaner. Afrikaners do believe that a wife should still get a good hiding if they don't comply. And the friends kept on saying to him, yes, she's too independent, she's too strong, she's too out-voiced, opinionated, they used to call me, and I should be quietened. And because I used to voice my opinion amongst my friend circles when I knew that they were also in a situation like this. And then that husband decided that a good hiding would be good enough to silence me, and it landed up in strangulation actually, and I left. At that time, my daughter was living with us and her fiancé, who was also involved in the same manipulation, where she was also being abused, but left, but she is back in that relationship. And I unfortunately have isolated myself from all family due to this. With that, in saying that, I have been very involved in the communities, especially with gender-based violence, to the extent that we were actually taking mothers and children out of their homes, rescuing them, in other words, at all times of night or when the partner wasn't there, and putting them in safe houses, going through the courts, doing the protection orders. I would attend courts with them because they would be afraid to actually go to court and apply for the protection order. And as we see many times, we see an abuser who goes and applies for a protection order, withdraws, or doesn't go back to court when they have to, because of the fear of that abuser who has to appear in court, being there and is intimidated. And then often the cases fall apart and don't go further. They still don't have the protection. And then there's again, going back, you are emotionally intimidated, abused, again when you've left and you go back, no, everything will be fine, hunky-dory for 2 months, 3 months, and it will all start over again. With that, I am always up in arms with our justice system. Our protection justice, how can I say, laws are fantastic, but they are not applied correctly. We find people going with their protection order to the police station, and here it's throughout South Africa, is that the police will not act on it. They will say to you, okay, maybe you're not showing physical abuse on your face. I say, oh, no, but you're fine. We see you too often. Maybe you've been there 3-4 times already. No, we see you too often, not going to help you. And there again, it gets left at that. I don't know how, with this as well, I would like to see police and law enforcement agencies, including magistrates and judges, because I've actually stood in a few court cases throughout South Africa where I have found very insensitive magistrates and judges, where again, and I've actually challenged 1 or 2, almost having myself arrested for contempt of court, because I've actually said to them, I'm sorry, but you are doing secondary abuse on my client or friend here by not even listening, because the abuser is usually a narcissistic personality, and narcissists are very clever. They are able to almost twist everything 360 degrees. You look as if you're the abuser. And there I would like to see magistrates and judges also being sensitized and educated on a regular basis on abuse and the consequences, the outcomes, and death happens more often than we are actually seeing through abuse. We don't hear about it. Media doesn't like to tell us about these deaths and children even dying under domestic violence. With this as well, we would also like to see the courts allowing a buddy. When I say call it a buddy, like myself, who is assisting someone with GBH, to be actually present, where often they actually ask us to leave the court. Understandably, also, I can also understand that parties of the confidentiality or don't want the others to be intimidated or advised by a non-lawyer or advocate in any way. But a buddy system definitely does give the abused confidence, which they are obviously lacking at that time, because they don't have any, that their whole confidence levels have been shattered. So by having a buddy, in inverted commas, is allowing them, is just giving them that extra personal strength to stand up to the abuser. Some courts, yes, they are quite happy to accept that, but majority don't. With this as well, we find the children being abused. Again, it's a roller coaster. Mothers being abused, children are abused as well, because in mentally and emotionally ways a lot of time, because they are actually seeing this. And again, social workers aren't available. My frustration there is that a social worker, yes, we also don't have enough social workers in this country, but they are not immediately available. You have to wait 3-4 months sometimes just to get an appointment where a lot more damage has been done in the time. With this as well is that, yeah, even on myself, I hit my head against brick walls every day. And maybe because I have grown an enormous strength and I fight back and retaliate and respond to my abuser's harassment, that I almost use it on a daily basis to teach others. You know, yes, and thank goodness they live far away from me, because I don't know where my anger would be if they lived in the same place. Where again, it's dangerous, because here we see you retaliating to an abuse and you land yourself up in some criminal case where you've done something, maybe, you know, you've shot someone because of that defense. And where does it leave you? It leaves you, the criminal, and them free again to carry on abuse on another person.
Susan, I'll just stop you there quickly. I just give somebody else a chance to add in, and I'll get back. You know, Susan, Susan, just on the issue of Susan's profile, she's quite well involved in gender-based violence. So Susan, maybe after this webinar, we can maybe just connect and take it from there.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. That
Wonderful.
would be lovely.
Wonderful, thank you. Next person, Hawa. I see Hawa is online. Hawa, can you unmute your video and your microphone? And then after that, Christy will speak. Hawa, if you, yeah, please, yes, please. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Hawa. Wonderful. Hawa, you can go ahead. You can go ahead, Hawa.
Okay. Good day, Advocate. I just wanted to firstly say thank you so much to you for doing this. So I am a survivor of, when I say survivor, it's because I've been for extensive counseling, and my counselor always tells me that you call yourself a survivor and not a victim, because when you take active steps to free yourself from gender-based violence, it's really important. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can go ahead. We can hear you. Thank you, Hawa.
Okay. I was a survivor of physical, sexual, intense, emotional, psychological, and mental abuse during my marriage. I lived in fear of my ex-husband. However, outwardly, I displayed a very well put together person and pretended life was normal. This was partially due to misleading cultural beliefs I had, which led me to believe that a man can just do whatever he wishes and a woman must accept it. No questions asked, because it's seen as part of my religion, but it's not even my religion, that a man can just, is the boss and he does whatever he wants. You are his doormat and his slave. In a way, I can say I believe that it was my right to be oppressed. Despite those subconscious and conscious beliefs, my intuition always told me, it kept pecking at me that this type of life is not acceptable. And I have 2 little kids and wondered what type of life am I choosing for them, and whether I can accept that I'm sending two human beings out into the world who will believe that abuse is okay. Why? Because it's okay to inflict it because dad, who I love and who I'm loyal to, did it. And it's okay to accept because mom, who I'm loyal to and love, accepted it. And the effects of gender-based violence are so detrimental to the victim as well as to the people around her or him, such as children, because you can't say that you being abused and you're not abusing the children, because I face this dilemma every time I go to the family advocate or the court. You can't say that if there's abuse happening in the home, and as long as the child is not being physically abused, for example, that it's okay because the child is learning from you. So we're saying that it's socially acceptable for us to teach our children that it's okay to be an abuser. There's nothing wrong with being an abuser. As a parent, I aim to guide my children into becoming good, kind, non-abusive members of society. However, why I left was I thought to myself that, I'm going to be a hypocrite. If I want to say that I want my children to be non-abusive, but I accepted abuse, I saw that as me being a hypocrite. I say today that it's a choice that you make to accept that type of life where you choose to be abused. But I also acknowledge how absolutely difficult it is to leave and to break free, because a person grabs hold of your mind. And Susan touched on this concept of a narcissist. They are master manipulators. And like Susan said, you stand up against it, but then you just look like you some kind of mad person. Like, what are you talking about? I think leaving and actually taking a stand requires quite a deep dive into the very depths of your soul, but it really is not impossible. Dealing with abusive personalities is really challenging. They distort your reality, they brainwash, manipulate, gaslight, and aim to control and unravel you. I think because we see a lot of physical violence in the country and sexual abuse, that psychological and emotional abuse is almost like not that important and not really seen as a crime because your bones are not broken. No one can see what's going on in your mind, what stress does to your health. And it's like, oh, if it happens in the future, you can't say that we must persecute someone for something that's going to affect you in the future. I was actually told something like this. And I found in most cases that victims feel that reporting the matter is just not a viable option because it's just going to ramp up the abuse. I've personally seen it where I was faced with this way, and then if you have maintenance from a father and then he's abusing you, and then you go to domestic violence court and he's an abuser, he is going to now get angry and then potentially stop paying you maintenance. And then what do? Do you rather tolerate his abuse, or do you rather let your children go without food? It's quite a dilemma. Ultimately, I feel if you really want to do something, you will do everything in your power, because only you in control of your life. You'll do everything in your power to ensure that you and your children are okay, whatever that takes. There's a fear of abuse, and there's also a fear of not succeeding in getting justice. And I would say it's a matter of deciding which fears need to be addressed and conquered. The fact that the law protects every citizen against violence must be enforced. We cannot live in fear. And even if we face the challenges now where, like Susan said, the magistrates, some of them are really insensitive, we can, even if it takes years, we can make a change in the system. One person, if you look at Nelson Mandela, that one person changed the lives of millions of people. Why can't one of us take a stand and then, just keep going and going and gaining momentum? And no matter how hard it is, that we just keep going. We're not going to put a stop to it, but we can at least, maybe even if we just get a just system in place. Because yes, the laws of this country are very progressive, but the application of these laws are pathetic. I'm sorry to say, it absolutely horrendous, and that comes down to not being educated on what not being educated properly, you know. And the secondary victimization is horrible, because you go through abuse, and then when you raise it, they say you're emotionally unhinged, and oh, you're so sensitive. But invalidation of your emotions is emotional abuse. And it's like they don't want to listen to what you went through. We don't care now. We're just looking at what's going on now. But what happens to your mind? What happens to everything that goes on? That, you know, when I say that to raise children in a manner that's socially acceptable and emotion, where you raise them in an emotionally healthy home, because what they see in their childhood determines who they become later in life. So they could become a serial killer because of like horrible experiences that they went through in their childhood. They could become rapists, because a little child is not born with those qualities to be a rapist, to be a serial killer, to be an abuser. They are formed into that. How? They formed into that by the experiences that they go through. I really don't understand how it's common sense to me. When you go to the courts, it's like, you know, no, you're just talking nonsense, you know. And lastly, I just wanted to say that currently I'm being financially, emotionally, economically, psychologically abused and intimidated and stalked. I poured my life and finances into a marriage that I'm denied the benefits of today. I've been through so many attorneys who really didn't do me justice, because obviously if I report the violence, it puts an end to the violence and puts an end to a lot of fees that they could make from me out of legal correspondence. This has spurred an intense passion in me to become an attorney myself. I'm an accountant, but now I'm looking to go into the field of law and dedicate my life to assist not only victims of gender-based violence, but also women and children who are facing family law matters where they have absolutely no assistance. I'm trying to find a job at present to begin my law career as soon as possible. I'm also doing a counseling course on the side. And I really hope that if anyone is going through any sort of abuse, the Domestic Violence Act is accessible online. It's not long at all. Very easy to understand, to read it, download it, read it online, do some research on what can be done to protect yourselves from abuse, and build on self-love and self-worth, and believe with all of your being that you do not, and neither do your children. No one deserves to be abused.
Howard, thank you very much for that. We appreciate your input. We only have about another 5 to 10 minutes left. I don't want to mention anybody's names here, and I see not all of them are mentioned. I see iPhone and things like that. So if there's any other person who would like to say a few words, a minute or two, please just send me a message, or you can just put on your video immediately. That's up to you. Otherwise, I will conclude the session and ask everybody to give a few seconds of input. Is there anyone else who would like to say something about the experience on domestic violence, sorry, on gender-based violence? You can unmute your video. Okay, so we'll end it on that point. Susan, any 1 or 2 minutes on your side? You'd like to add anything to what you have said earlier on? And then I will conclude after, if Howard doesn't have anything else to say.
Yes, sure. Can I just point out how I would like to see things changed or made a little bit better. I would like, you know, we always have it, and because I'm also involved very much in the education side, educational systems in public schools, I would like to see the consequences and awareness of GBV made at high school levels in their skills, their life skill orientation classes. Just like they've had the controversial debates on sex education, which both go together because sexual abuse is also very big.
Yes.
And especially in different cultures. School staff need to be educated with the ability to recognize GBF at school levels and intervene through the correct authorities, social workers, SAPs, etc. Today, we often see GBV in the form of school bullying. The word bullying is used a lot at school and not gender-based violence or anything like that. And the cultural stances on gender-based violence need to be seriously addressed, and education on change needs to be instilled. Provide early intervention systems that would actually include being able to get your social workers, SAPs, your trauma centers without delay and not being turned away. It must be seen as seriously as a physical trauma, accident trauma, when someone comes looking for help. Strengthen the media education, not only in adverts, but having actual interviews, as we are having with survivors and even reformed abusers, because you do get reformed abusers. They can, if they get the same help, they can reform. They can be seen and change. The behaviors can be changed. It's like an addiction. It can be changed. Not an abuser, they remain an abuser, but they can manage their angers or reasons for this. This must also not only be done in Women's Month, as we often hear, it must be done all year round, year after year. State grants for safe homes. There aren't enough safe homes for children or for women and women and children. They are always full, and then often in the safe homes, because of space, they can't take mother and 3 children. So we need to look at all those things, and the state needs to give grants more accessibly to these homes to help, where again your social workers, etc., must be involved. Yeah, that is really what I have much. And the most important thing is, don't be afraid to leave. It is hard. My last time I got on a bus with 2 handbags, toothbrush, sloppies, clothes on my back, and left. I came back to Cape Town, where I live now. I am from Cape Town, and I had to start over with no finance. Thank goodness I've got friends, old school friends, that rallied together and helped me get off the street, literally, where I was, due to having to run. But yes, you can leave. Don't let anyone tell you you can't leave. It's very difficult. We all understand that, but leave. And once you've left, you will pat yourself on the back and say, I've done it. I've taken back my strength. I've taken back my person. And yes, it's forward here on. It might take a while to get yourself on your feet, but yes, you can do that. That's where I'd like to leave it.